me. I'm joined on the set by France 24's Doug Herbert. Doug, just to be clear, we don't really know who is behind these drone attacks that happen in and around Moscow. Kyiv says it's not directly involved, but wherever the responsibility may lie, it's sure to have a psychological impact on Russians themselves.
It's already having a psychological impact, and it's palpable. What we have here is the first time that you've had civilian neighborhoods, civilian areas actually targeted by these attacks. And not civilian areas anywhere, but in the showcase Russian capital, Moscow. It is the first time that we have had obviously incursions, all sorts of reported attacks around the periphery, around the Belgorod region, on the border with Ukraine in the south, the Bryansk region, all of those areas. This is the first time into the heart of Russia that we have these types of attacks really reaching into the heart of Russia. And you could see on that map there on the screens, we put it full screen. These are Moscow's a giant sprawling city, much bigger than Paris. It's sort of a London-sized city with many, many concentric circles and zones. So these attacks go right down the iconic Leninsky, avenue, which is in the center of Moscow. Prasayuznaya is also not far from the center, more southerly, and then on the outskirts of Moscow at Lasova Street. So this is showing that these are all attacks within that outer ring of Moscow, that vast sprawling city, but within the capital. And what's psychological here is that, for many Russians, it's been very easy. Yes, we've had the mobilization last fall, which suddenly put the fact that there's much more than just a special military operation. There's a full-fledged war going on, a full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. It put it front and center on their radar because it actually came into their lives. It affected Russians and their households and their families. That was the mobilization. But in a sense, the actual fighting of the war seemed very far away from most Russians, and especially if you watch the toxic industrial strength propaganda on state TV, it was easy to forget that there was even any war that had any bearing on your life whatsoever that could affect you in any way. So when I say that these attacks reach into the heart of Russia, regardless of where responsibility lies, it does have that psychological impact because it becomes harder and harder to ignore the fact that this is not just some far-off quote, special military operation. This is a real and present war, which right now is coming home to roost in the heart of the Russian capital and not far from the Kremlin. And it does come, right, less than a month after that drone attack on the Kremlin, which the U.S. at the time suggested was the work perhaps of Ukrainian special military units, special military forces, or intelligence units. We don't know where the attack lies. Kyiv's officially said in this case that it is not directly involved, but it is enjoying watching these events unfold. If there are people, saboteurs, people who are partisans or anti-Russian doing this on Ukraine's behalf, on the Kyiv's behalf, they're like, that's fine with us.
And all of this, of course, is happening as both sides seem to be ramping up preparations for a Ukrainian counteroffensive.
Yeah, we're seeing this everywhere. In recent days, we've talked about, obviously, Russia, relocating some of its tactical nuclear weapons to Belarusian soil. Some S-400 aerial defense systems have also been in recent days taken to Belarus. We've heard more and more in recent weeks about these incursions by supposedly anti-Russian, anti-Putin, ultra-nationalists, both perhaps Ukrainians, but also ethnic Russians, of Russian nationality, who have sort of teamed up with Ukrainian units and saboteurs to launch these attacks in Russia. And we're seeing all of that as the trenches continue to be dug by the Russian defenses as they brace for some sort of counteroffensive. And of course, lest we forget, the wave after wave of drone and cruise missile attacks over Kyiv and throughout Ukraine in recent days. We've now had 17 waves of those, and it's not just in the dead of night anymore. It's also in broad daylight.
Thanks for that, Doug. France 24's Doug Herbert.